I still remember the smell of printer ink. I was standing in the living room, holding the papers that had just arrived, thick envelope, legal logo, nothing suspicious on the outside. I thought it was just a business registration confirmation. You know, the dream we built together. Her bakery. Her name. Our sweat. But when I flipped to the ownership section, my heart stopped. It wasn't her name. And it damn sure wasn't mine. It was Bradley Keller. A man I didn't even know she still spoke to. A man who once tried to toast to our wedding, who now legally owned everything I had broken my back to build. 3 jobs. 4 years. 4 birthdays missed. I delivered boxes in snowstorms. Bartended on holidays. Slept in my car to save rent. I gave up me to build us. But she gave the bakery to him. No explanation. No apology. When I confronted her, calm, shaking, humiliated, she just said, "It made more sense that way." He helped me register it. That's when I realized the woman I loved wasn't stupid. She wasn't careless. She was calculating. And I was never part of her long-term plan. I was just the labor. This is the story of how I gave everything to a woman who gave my future to someone else. And how I came back from it, quietly, painfully, like a man who bled in private. If this story grips you, subscribe for more real-life betrayals, revenge, and justice, told from a man's point of view. Because some of us loved too hard, and lost everything but our voice. I wasn't always the kind of man who got blindsided like that. I was raised to provide, to protect, to believe in the power of building something from the ground up. My father was a contractor, my mother a nurse. Blue collar. Straight-spined. We didn't chase luxury, we chased stability. So when I met Hannah Ross at a community fundraiser in Knoxville, Tennessee, she felt like home. Warm smile, a little shy, but her laugh had this fullness to it. Like she didn't need much to be happy. She was the kind of woman who remembered your coffee order but forgot her own keys. The kind who dreamed of opening a bakery not for profit, but for legacy. "I just want to create something people come back for," she told me once. Something that makes them feel like they belong. That dream caught me. Hooked me deep. I was 32, working full-time as a warehouse manager and part-time on the weekends driving Uber. I'd never been in a relationship that made me believe in forever until her. She was 28, recently done with culinary school, full of ambition and Pinterest boards. And I wanted nothing more than to be the man she built that dream with. People used to say we were too good to be true. Church folks would smile and call us the couple who gave them hope. We coordinated outfits on Sundays, showed up to every family dinner with homemade desserts, and volunteered at the food pantry like we were running for office. But behind the smiles, I was grinding. I picked up a 3rd job 6 months into our engagement. Overnight shifts at a loading dock, just to save for the bakery's down payment. Slept 3 to 4 hours on a good day. Drank more coffee than water. Missed my cousin's wedding. Missed my own birthday twice. Gave up on the idea of buying a truck or taking that fishing trip with my brothers. Everything was for her. I believed in her more than I'd ever believed in myself. I'd come home and she'd be sitting at the kitchen table, sketching logos, baking test recipes, whispering things like, "I can't believe this is happening." And I'd smile through my exhaustion, kiss the top of her head, and whisper back, "You earned it, babe. This is all you." Funny how that sentence came back to haunt me. Because maybe deep down, she believed me. Maybe she heard me say, "This is all you," and took it literally. And maybe I was too blinded by love and loyalty to see that while I was building a dream for us, she was building an escape plan for herself. But back then, none of that had happened yet. Back then, I was the proud fiancé of a future bakery owner. A man people looked at and said, "That woman hit the jackpot." They didn't know. I felt like I was the lucky one. And maybe that was my first mistake. Because when you think you're the lucky one, you overlook things. Like how her phone suddenly started living face down on the kitchen counter. Or how she changed her passcode and joked, "It's for privacy, not secrecy." I laughed it off. Said I trusted her. And I did. At the time. Or how she started saying, "Brad," a little too often. Bradley Keller. Her business mentor. Supposedly some guy from her small business workshop. She said he'd already opened a few bakeries in North Carolina and was advising her on what not to do. I'd hear his name sprinkled in casual sentences like salt. "Oh, Brad says I should think twice about location. Brad thinks we should use LLC structure instead of sole prop." At first, I appreciated that she had someone experienced helping her. I thought, good, she's taking this seriously. But then she started texting more than talking to me. One night, she was smiling at her phone while we were watching TV. I asked what was funny. She looked up and said, "Oh, just Brad. He's hilarious." I remember that moment. I felt something. Not jealousy. Just unease. Like I was being moved from partner to placeholder. But I pushed it down. Told myself I was tired. Overthinking. There was the time I came home early from a shift, surprise bouquet in hand, and found her on a Zoom call. She jumped like a guilty teenager, slammed her laptop shut, said it was just supplier stuff. I didn't question it. I kissed her on the forehead and went to shower. I didn't want to be that guy, the insecure husband. Even when my older brother pulled me aside at Thanksgiving and said, "Something feels off, man. She's distant." Even when my mom gently asked if everything was okay because Hannah barely looked up from her phone during dinner. I defended her. Told them she was under stress. Told myself she's just focused. Looking back now, it's not that the signs weren't there. It's that I had already decided she was incapable of betrayal. I wore my loyalty like a blindfold, proud, tight, and sealed. Until the day that envelope showed up at our front door. It was a rainy Tuesday. I remember because the mailbox was soaked and the ink on the label had bled slightly. I brought the documents inside, wiped them dry with a dish towel, and set them on the kitchen table beside her favorite coffee mug. It was supposed to be a milestone day. The bakery had just secured its lease. She told me we were finalizing the paperwork to officially register it. I thought we were signing our future into permanence. I even stopped on the way home to grab a bottle of cider to celebrate. But when I opened that envelope, I felt time stop. There it was, in clean legal font. Owner of record Bradley Keller. Not Hannah Ross. Not Hannah Carrington. Not me. Bradley Keller. I flipped through the rest of the papers in disbelief, hoping it was some kind of clerical error. But every page confirmed the same brutal truth. The bakery I worked 3 jobs to fund, the one I skipped holidays and family milestones for, had been registered under another man's name. I stared at the signature line. His scribble was arrogant. Confident. Like he knew he belonged there. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My throat closed up. My knees actually buckled, no exaggeration, and I caught myself on the kitchen counter. The cider bottle rolled off the table and shattered on the floor. I didn't even look down. I just stood there, frozen in my own home. When she walked in later that evening, grocery bags in hand, I was still holding the paperwork. She smiled at me like nothing had happened. "Hey babe. Did the registration come in?" I didn't answer. I just held the papers out to her. She looked at them. And then, she didn't flinch. She didn't panic. She didn't deny. She just said, like she was reading off a damn grocery list, "Oh. Yeah. Brad helped me register it. We agreed it made more sense this way, for tax reasons." I stared at her like she had grown another face. I asked quietly, "You registered the business I paid for, under another man's name?" She shrugged. And said, "You're taking this personal when it's just paperwork. I told you he's been helping me with the logistics." That was the moment I realized, this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was a decision. She had chosen to give everything I worked for to someone else. And the worst part? She didn't even look ashamed. She looked annoyed. Like I was ruining the mood. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I just nodded. Slowly. Gathered the broken glass from the floor. And took my keys off the hook. She didn't ask where I was going. She didn't try to stop me. I slept in my car that night in the parking lot of a hardware store, curled up in the front seat, staring at a roof I couldn't afford to lose. My back ached. My hands were trembling. And my soul, it was silent. That was the first night I realized I was completely alone. And still, I wanted to believe there was some explanation that made it make sense. The next day, I called her. Told her we needed to talk. She agreed to meet me at a cafe downtown. I got there early. Sat at a corner table. Watched the door like a man watching a dream dissolve. When she arrived, she was on her phone, laughing. With him. I saw his name on the caller ID reflection in the cafe window. Brad. That same Brad whose name now sat above mine on the paperwork of the life I'd built. She ended the call, slid into the chair across from me, and acted like she hadn't just stolen years of my life. I asked her calmly, "Why?" She looked me dead in the eye and said, "I needed someone who understood business. You work hard, but you're not strategic. Brad knew what I needed, and he got it done. Like I was a donkey who pulled the cart, but wasn't smart enough to own it." I didn't speak for a full minute. Just sat there. Then I said, "So I was good enough to fund it, but not to own it." She didn't reply. And that silence told me everything. When I walked out of that cafe, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just whispered to myself, over and over again, "She used me. She used me. She used me." And I still had rent due. Still had bills in both our names. Still had muscles sore from night shifts and bags under my eyes from missed sleep. And no one, not a single person, called to check on me. Not her. Not Brad. Not even the friends who once called us relationship goals. That day didn't just break my heart. It erased me from the story I thought I was writing. And the days that followed, they felt like walking through fog. Not grief, grief has a shape. This was something else. A kind of hollow I'd never known. I still went to work. Still clocked in at 4 a.m. for the dock shift, grabbed gas station coffee, answered emails for the warehouse by mid-morning, and drove Uber at night. But I moved like a man underwater. Quiet. Numb. Unseen. She didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't even pretend to check if I was okay. It was like the moment the business papers were signed. I vanished from her world. What's worse? She kept up appearances. On social media, she was celebrating. Dreams coming true. Thank you to everyone who believed in me. Photos of the storefront, the bakery sign going up, balloons, champagne. And there I was, scrolling, alone in my car, watching strangers congratulate her on my sacrifice. Nobody knew. Nobody knew I'd maxed out my second credit card to get that mixer she wanted. Nobody knew I pawned my watch to help cover the last rent payment on the kitchen space. Nobody knew the hands that built that dream weren't hers alone, they were mine. Bleeding, calloused, unseen. I tried to talk to my brother. I did. But when I said it out loud, "She put the business in another man's name." Even I heard how pathetic it sounded. He asked, "Did she cheat?" I said, "I don't even know anymore." He went quiet. That kind of silence that isn't comfort. Just confusion. Like he didn't know how to respond without making it worse. After that, I stopped talking about it. My mom came over one afternoon to drop off food. She looked at me and said, "Son, you're disappearing." And I wasn't eating. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't even angry, just empty. There were moments I almost texted her. Moments I thought, maybe if I just explained how this made me feel, Maybe she'd understand. But then I'd remember her face in that cafe. Cold. Indifferent. Like she was doing me a favor by explaining the betrayal. That's when I knew, deep down, she didn't slip. She planned this. She waited until she had enough information, enough capital, enough of my sacrifice, and then handed the keys to someone else. It was never just a business decision. It was an escape route. And me? I was the launch pad. So I tried to fix it, in the only way men like me know how. I worked harder. Took extra shifts. Stopped going home. Just kept moving. There was a night I pulled into the driveway and saw lights on inside. Her silhouette was there, behind the blinds, walking back and forth. She didn't notice my car. She was laughing. And something inside me broke all over again. She wasn't grieving. She wasn't torn. She was just living. While I was unraveling, I started blaming myself. Maybe I was too controlling. Maybe I should have taken more interest in the business side. Maybe I wasn't enough of a strategic partner, like she said. That kind of self-blame, it's a slow poison. It doesn't kill you in one gulp. It drips. Quietly. Daily. Until you start believing the lie that you're the reason someone else stopped loving you. I even texted her one night. If I made you feel alone, I'm sorry. She never replied. And that silence taught me more than any argument ever could. She wasn't confused. She wasn't hurt. She was finished. And I was never the priority. I was the investor she didn't have to pay back. The ghost behind the storefront. That's all I was. And I probably would have stayed in that fog for months, if not for one voicemail. It came on a Thursday night, 2 weeks after I texted her that apology she never answered. I was on a delivery run, parked outside a 7-Eleven, eating stale crackers and scrolling through job boards when my phone buzzed. Missed call. Unknown number. Then, the voicemail dropped. I played it. It was her. But she didn't mean to call me. She was laughing, loud, breathless, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard in months. And in the background, I heard his voice. Brad. He said something like, "You really got him to believe you'd split ownership?" "Damn, babe," she replied through laughter. "Of course he believed me. He's a good guy. That's what made it easy. That's what made it easy." I remember the sound of my own breath, how it changed, shallow, clipped. I sat in that car for over an hour, listening to it again and again. Every time I replayed it, another piece of me shut off. It wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't even the laughter. It was the word. Easy. I wasn't just deceived. I was predictable. A chess piece. A man she knew would stay loyal and silent, while she moved her future into someone else's hands. And that's when something in me went cold. No more crying. No more questioning. Just stillness. That voicemail was the moment I realized this wasn't about love lost. It was about me finally seeing what I refused to believe: she never wanted us. She wanted what I could build, until she could afford to discard me. That night, I deleted her number. I turned off location sharing. Cancelled the joint credit card. Removed myself from the lease. And I didn't leave a note. She came home to a quiet apartment, and a locked door. That was the moment she realized I was no longer her safety net. No longer her free labor. No longer the man who'd begged to be chosen. I wasn't bitter. I was done. And once I crossed that line, something in me finally clicked back into place. Not overnight. Not with some grand transformation. It started small, like waking up and actually making my bed. Cooking real food instead of grabbing drive-thru. Turning my phone off at night instead of scrolling through what-ifs. I stopped waiting for her to apologize. Stopped checking her social media. Stopped answering texts from mutual friends who didn't want to pick sides, but somehow still tagged her in every smiling post. I got a gym membership. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted to glow up and make her regret it. But because my body had carried weight, emotional, physical, financial, for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to take care of it for me. I started journaling. Just a couple lines a day. Some days it was. Still hurts. Still standing. Other days. You survived the storm she prayed you wouldn't wake from. Therapy followed a few weeks later. I walked into that room thinking I had nothing to say. Thought I'd sit there in silence, guarded. But somehow, after 5 minutes, I was telling a stranger about a voicemail that still rang in my bones. He looked at me and said, "You were her ladder. She climbed. Then kicked it." That line stayed with me. And it gave me something I didn't know I needed: language. Language for betrayal. Language for worth. Language for letting go without needing to burn the whole house down. I didn't post vague quotes on Instagram. Didn't do some big "I'm healing" speech. I just got quiet. Cleaned out the apartment. Donated her clothes. Boxed up the memories and took them to a storage unit I haven't opened since. I changed my number. Not to cut people off, but to give myself silence. Real silence. The kind you grow inside, not the kind she left me with. And in that silence, something beautiful happened. I found peace. Not instantly. Not fully. But enough to breathe. Enough to walk past the bakery one afternoon and not feel rage. Enough to see her laugh with him outside the shop and just keep walking. Enough to hear her name and not flinch. A few months later, I got an offer from a small distribution company across the state. Better pay. Less hours. No night shifts. I took it without hesitation. Moved out of Knoxville. Signed a 1-bedroom lease in a quiet town where no one knew my story. I bought new furniture. Picked the curtains myself. Started sleeping with the windows open again. And one Sunday morning, after a run and a strong cup of black coffee, I caught myself humming in the kitchen. Just humming. And I smiled. Not because anything grand had happened, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt like me again. I wasn't the guy who got used. I wasn't the ex who built her dream. I was just a man rebuilding quietly. And that, somehow, felt like the loudest kind of comeback there is. Not the kind that needs applause. Not the kind that makes headlines. Just the kind where you wake up and no longer feel like a fool for loving the wrong person. I used to think being a man meant holding it all together, no matter what. Holding down the job. Holding up the family. Holding in the pain. But now I know, strength isn't silent suffering. It's walking away from the fire without dragging the ashes everywhere you go. If you told me a year ago that I'd survive her betrayal, I would have laughed in your face. I thought she was my forever. Thought I was building a legacy. I was ready to give her the world, and she gave mine to someone else. But here's what I know now: love isn't proven by what you endure for someone. It's revealed by what they protect in you, even when it's inconvenient. She didn't protect me. She used me. And still, I don't hate her. That surprises people. But hate takes energy. And she already took enough. I'm not bitter. I'm just not blind anymore. If I could go back and tell that version of me, the man who worked 3 jobs and believed every late-night excuse, I wouldn't scream at him. I'd just put a hand on his shoulder and say, "You deserve to be loved with the same intensity you give. And one day, you will be. Because that's the truth." Some women won't see the man in front of them until he's gone. Some won't even look. But that says more about their vision than your value. So if you're a man listening to this, and your story feels too close to mine, I want you to know something: you're not weak for loving her. You're not stupid for staying longer than you should have. You're not soft for hoping she choose you back. You're human. You gave your best. You showed up. You believed in her when nobody else did. And she still chose to feed another man with the bread you baked. But her decision doesn't define your future. Yours does. You don't have to burn down your past to walk into your peace. You don't have to get revenge to reclaim your worth. You just have to choose yourself. Quietly. Fully. Finally. And when you do, when you start rebuilding not out of spite but out of self-respect, you'll be shocked how quickly life starts opening back up again. The laughter comes back. So does the sleep. And maybe, eventually, the love. But it starts with one decision: no more chasing people who treat you like a backup plan. So if you've ever been through this, if you've ever felt used, erased, replaced, I see you, brother. You're not alone. Type, "I survived," in the comments, and tell your story. Not for sympathy. For freedom. Let's remind each other that being broken isn't the end. Sometimes it's just the start of building something that's finally yours.